Hello, everybody. It's John Ross with the John Ross Show today, the 4th of February, 2026. It's 27 degrees out there, and that snow in the background there, I guess it's going to be going maybe soon here. I don't know if we got a few more flurry days, but I don't know if we got anything big coming up. So maybe our winter snows are going to be going down here. But it's 27 degrees. That picture is in Cicero, I understand. I found that out. I thought it was Chicago, but it's the 67 snow, which was at the end of, I think, the 26th and 27th of January in 1967. So that's a little while ago. Today we're going to talk about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Now, I've read some of his works. I do have copies of his books, or at least one of his books, The Cost of Discipleship. I believe I read another biography of him many years ago, but I've read a lot of online stuff about him. And today is his 120th birthday of this German author, theologian, Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And I was listening on a podcast. I encourage you to listen to this. This is where I got some of my thoughts for today here. Today's Russell Moore podcast. He was talking with another theologian. I believe his name was Marsh, and he seemed to know quite a bit about Bonhoeffer. He had done some work on him, about him. And anyway, it's an interesting podcast. It's on YouTube. So it's Russell Moore and Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And how does he speak today? Does Bonhoeffer speak today? And how did he work with the government there? Uh, He'd been a longtime opponent of Adolf Hitler and the German government for over, well, maybe 12, 15 years. He was opposed to that government. One of his basic things was they were not treating the Jews right. He knew that from the beginning, and that was a deep, deep concern of his. And I think the question, it was brought up about another individual who stood up in the South, Fannie Lou Hamer. I remember her name vaguely. They were talking about her because both our podcaster Russell Moore and his guest were from Mississippi, and they knew about Fannie Lou Hamer, and she was from Mississippi, and she stood up quite a bit. And they had a story about her getting thrown in jail and being beaten up. And when she was released, she said to the people, "How are you going to answer this when you get, well, basically St. Peter at the gates when Jesus judges?" And they just fudge like, "Oh, we didn't do anything. I don't remember." That's not going to work, bro. We can't deny what we see in our eyes. And I know that'd be the same with Germany there too. They couldn't deny what they saw. I read somewhere online, and I got it verified that General Patton, when he got to see Buchenwald, it was after the Russians had been there, maybe 10 days after it had been liberated, but it was still not in great, great shape. No, it wasn't. And what he did, some would say it was not the right way to handle things, but when he saw the stench and smell, and I guess he almost vomited being a trooper like he was. It was very hard. So what he did, he knew that the crematoriums in the area put out their smoke, and everybody could smell the flesh. And what he did was a town, I don't know, it was maybe a couple miles away. I think it's called Winmer, if I remember the name right. So what he did, he gathered up all the sophisticates, mostly 1,000 residents of that town, and marched them to Buchenwald. And he wanted to show them Buchenwald, which they seemed to never have realized was there, but they knew it was there. They just didn't want to see it. So Patton made him go through the whole place. Oh, that's something else when you see the horror of humanity against others. And that was horrible. And those people, I think, finally realized some of them were just fainted even, and just everything when they saw the death there. There were still some residents there too, and the death. And I think he had some of the citizens help bury the Jewish deceased. So I don't know. There's some people in our country who want to deny the Holocaust. I want them to stand at the gate too and say that to St. Peter or our Jesus. Yeah, where are you coming from? Where are you coming from? Dietrich Bonhoeffer stood up, and he's well received in several churches. Lutherans, well, I think the modern Lutherans, not some of the older Lutherans might not be, but he has a feast day in the Anglican Church, and his death day, I believe that's the 9th of April. Today is his birthday. So he's well received in the church community as a prophet, as a saint, that he stood up. Here's a picture of him in his garden. I guess he was a young man who, let's see if I can get this up now. There it is. There it is. I didn't want to do it that way. Yeah. And he's, I think it's from 1939, this picture in his garden. I think it's 39, I read. He died at age 39, also in 1945 in April. The Germans, I guess just a few weeks from the end of the war, some reason they just had to kill the guy. So it's recorded that they hung him with what we call it, wire. They hung him by wire, and that's how he died. And but his witness is still there, and his friends have written a lot of things about him and others. And so I would encourage you to listen to that podcast. It was about an hour podcast, so it was very interesting. He talked about contemporary things too, of course, and mentioned a friend that I was happy that came our way to Aurora, Illinois, was John Perkins. I mentioned him there in the podcast too about racial reconciliation and how that was been out there since when the Promise Keepers movement. Now, can we talk about that word now again? Is the guest there and more were wondering would people would our Christian nationalist right-wing Christians let us talk about racial reconciliation, or is that called woke? Don't ask me where they get that from. They just don't want anything to do with others, which is part of Christianity. That's what Bonhoeffer was standing up for the other. He was standing up for Christian Jews and Jews in general. The church wasn't accepting Christian converts of Judea from Jews, and so he was a man there for his time and our time too. So that's what I want you to think about today. How are we going to be a witness to this world? And today's Russell Moore podcast, you see the YouTube where you can reach that. I hope you can do that. I was impressed with that. So I would encourage that to on Dietrich Bonhoeffer's 120th birthday. I think my parents were about 10 years younger. My mom was 10 years younger, about, I think my parents would be 100 and, see, what would they be now? 100 and 113 and 111. So it's getting up there. Bonhoeffer is 120 though. And he came to the United States and went back to Germany. He knew could get in trouble, but he went back. And there's a lot of ethical questions sometimes about Bonhoeffer's latter years, and the podcast talks about it. To do or not do. To not do might be sin, and to do it might be sin. So Bonhoeffer was placed in a dilemma there about Germany and which way to go. We could say it maybe was sin both ways. And it's between a rock and a hard place, I guess the word is. They asked the guest theologian there, what would Bonhoeffer speak passage would he use for America today? And I think the church should do more of this too. My church has started this, so I hope he can think on it more too. Be the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5-7. Pretty radical stuff in there. And it's a long sermon. It takes a lot of thinking on that. So that maybe is what Bonhoeffer would bring to us today. To love our enemies and to do good. So, in compassion. And so that's what we are thinking on today. And I wish you all well here for the next days. And we'll be back on Friday, Lord willing, as they say. And I'm going to say, here's what we're going to say. We're going to say bye-bye for right now. And we'll see you then on Friday, Lord willing. And thank you for listening. And remember that podcast on Dietrich Bonhoeffer. So thank you very much for listening. And bye-bye now, everybody. Bye-bye.